The summer night was quiet except for the chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. Tom wiped his greasy hands on an old rag as he looked over the tractor engine he'd been fixing. The clock on his workshop wall showed it was almost midnight, but he wanted to finish this job before heading to bed. Old Bill needed his tractor back for tomorrow's harvest, and Tom never liked to disappoint his customers. A strange humming sound made him pause. At first, he thought it was just his tired mind playing tricks, but the sound grew louder. It wasn't like any engine he'd heard before. Not a car, not a plane, and definitely not a tractor. The sound had a musical quality to it, like a tuning fork struck by lightning. Tom stepped outside his workshop, squinting into the darkness. His repair shop sat on 5 acres of land, most of it filled with old vehicles and spare parts. Some folks called it a junkyard, but Tom called it his parts library. The humming was coming from somewhere behind the stack of old pickup trucks. "Hello," he called out, grabbing his heavy flashlight. "Someone there?" The humming suddenly stopped, replaced by a soft hissing sound and a faint blue glow. Tom's curiosity got the better of his caution. He'd always been the type to walk toward interesting problems rather than away from them. As he rounded the pile of trucks, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, half hidden among his collection of rusty treasures, sat what could only be a spacecraft. It was about the size of a small bus, but shaped like a teardrop made of liquid silver. One side of it looked damaged, with what appeared to be scorch marks marring its otherwise perfect surface. "Well, I'll be damned," Tom whispered, scratching his gray-streaked beard. In his 30 years of fixing everything from lawnmowers to luxury cars, this was definitely a first. A section of the ship's surface suddenly rippled like water, and an opening appeared. Tom gripped his flashlight tighter, ready to use it as a weapon if needed. But what emerged from the ship made him forget all about defending himself. The alien was clearly female, though not in any way Tom expected. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Her features were elegant but just different enough from human to be unsettling. Her eyes were larger, her fingers longer, and her movements had an unusual fluid grace. "Your pardon," she said in perfect English, though her voice had an odd resonance to it, like she was speaking through water. "I find myself in need of mechanical assistance." Tom blinked several times, then did what he always did when a customer came in. He switched to professional mode. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked, as if he dealt with alien spacecraft every day. The alien woman's color-shifting skin rippled in what might have been surprise. "You are not alarmed by my appearance." Tom shrugged. "Lady, in my line of work, you learn to expect the unexpected. Besides, you're not the strangest-looking customer I've had this week." He grinned, thinking of old Pete with his wild hair and mismatched clothes. "Name's Tom. I fix things." "You may call me V," she replied, her skin taking on a warmer hue. "My ship's quantum drive was damaged in an unfortunate encounter. Your planet was the nearest with sufficient technological development for potential repairs." Tom walked around the ship, his experienced eye taking in the damage. He didn't know what a quantum drive was, but he could recognize burn patterns and stress damage when he saw them. "Mind if I take a closer look?" V gestured gracefully toward the ship. "Please do, though I must warn you, the technology is far beyond." She trailed off as Tom had already pulled out his pocket multi-tool and popped open an access panel with practiced ease. He whistled at the complexity of the systems inside, but his eyes lit up with interest rather than confusion. "Now this is interesting," he muttered, more to himself than to V. The power distribution looks similar to a Tesla coil setup, but the containment system. He pointed his flashlight at a particular component. "That's your problem right there. The housing's cracked, probably from the heat buildup when this regulator failed." V's skin shifted to a bright, surprised blue. "You can understand our systems." Tom laughed. "Understand? No, but damaged parts look damaged in any language. And if there's one thing I know, it's how things break. and how to fix them. Tom grabbed his toolbox from the workshop, his mind already racing with possibilities. As he approached the ship again, V stood watching him with what seemed like a mixture of hope and doubt. Her iridescent skin had taken on a subtle purple shade that reminded him of storm clouds. "Perhaps I should explain what happened," she said, gesturing to the damaged section of her ship. "I was transporting rare minerals from the Centauri systems when 3 pirate ships appeared from behind an asteroid belt. They attacked without warning." Her hand traced the scorched hull. "I managed to escape, but not before they damaged my quantum drive." "Pirates, huh?" Tom nodded thoughtfully, setting down his toolbox. "Seems some things are universal. Had a bunch of thieves tried to steal parts from my yard last month, though they were using bolt cutters, not space guns." V's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "You are taking this very calmly, Tom the mechanic. Most humans would be less composed." "Well," Tom said, pulling out a diagnostic tablet he used for modern cars, "when you've seen as many broken things as I have, you learn that panicking never fixed anything." He tapped the tablet's screen. "Mind if I try connecting this to your ship's systems? Might not be compatible, but worth a shot." V reached into her ship and brought out a small crystalline device. "This translator should help. It can interface with most technological systems." She held it over Tom's tablet, and suddenly the screen filled with streaming data. Tom whistled as he watched the readings. "Your quantum drive. It's like a super advanced engine, right? Pushes the ship faster than light." He scrolled through the data, his experienced eyes picking out patterns in the seemingly alien information. "Simplified, but essentially correct," V said, her skin shifting to a surprised golden hue. "You can interpret the readings." "Some of it," Tom replied, walking around to the damaged section again. "An engine's an engine, even if it runs on fancy quantum stuff instead of diesel. Something's got to push, something's got to control the push, and something's got to keep it all from blowing up." He pointed to a particularly complex set of readings. "And right now, your don't blow up part isn't working right." V's skin darkened slightly. "The quantum containment field is failing. Without it, attempting faster than light travel would be unfortunate." "That's one way to put it," Tom chuckled. He reached into the exposed panel, careful not to touch anything yet. "The damage isn't as bad as it could be. The main housing is cracked, but the core systems look intact. It's like when a radiator cracks but doesn't damage the engine block." "Can you repair it?" V asked, then quickly added, "I should mention that attempting to handle quantum technology without proper training could be extremely dangerous." Tom stood up, brushing dust off his knees. "Everything worth fixing is a little dangerous. But I've got some ideas. The housing needs to contain energy and handle high temperatures, right? I've worked with similar problems on high-performance engines." He walked over to a shelf in his workshop and came back with a small piece of metal. "This is a specialized alloy I use for custom racing engines. With some modifications, it might work as a temporary fix." V studied the metal with obvious skepticism. "Your planet's materials are primitive by our standards." "Sometimes primitive works better," Tom said, already sketching a design on his tablet. "Simple solutions last longer than complicated ones. Look at the sharks. They haven't changed much in millions of years because their design just works. You propose to fix my quantum drive with the mechanical equivalent of a shark." V's skin rippled with colors Tom hadn't seen before. "More or less," he grinned. "The question is, do you trust me to try? I know it's asking a lot, letting someone from a primitive planet work on your ship. But I promise you this. If I think I can't fix it safely, I'll stop. And if I think I can fix it, I won't stop until I do." V was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through various shades as she considered. Finally, she said, "The fact that you understand the risks and still want to help, that shows wisdom." "Very well, Tom the mechanic. Show me what your primitive solutions can do." Tom's grin widened as he rolled up his sleeves. "First thing we need to do is get better lighting out here. This might take a while, but I've got coffee, tools, and the most interesting repair job I've ever seen. Let's get to work." The next few days turned Tom's simple repair shop into something out of a science fiction movie. He cleared space in the back of his workshop and used old tarps to hide V's ship from curious eyes. The local folks knew better than to ask too many questions about the strange lights and sounds coming from Tom's place. He'd always been known for working on unusual projects. Tom sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by technical readouts displayed on floating screens that V had provided. Empty coffee cups littered the area around him. He hadn't slept much, too fascinated by what he was learning. The quantum drive wasn't just an engine. It was a masterpiece of engineering. But even masterpieces could be understood if you looked at them the right way. "The quantum field generator," he muttered, making notes on his old paper notebook. "It's basically like a turbocharger, but for space itself." He looked up at V, who was watching him with what he'd learned to recognize as curious interest. Her skin had taken on a soft blue-green shade she displayed when learning something new. "That is not entirely incorrect," she said, moving closer to look at his hand-drawn diagrams. "Though comparing it to such simple technology is like comparing a star to a candle." Tom chuckled, adding more details to his sketch. "Sometimes a candle's all you need. Look here. The quantum field wraps around the ship like the air flows around a turbocharger. Different scale, same principle." He held up his notebook, showing a rough drawing that mixed familiar engine parts with his understanding of the alien technology. V's skin flickered with surprise colors. "Your diagrams are unusual, but they show a genuine understanding of the basic concepts. How are you learning this so quickly?" "Been fixing things all my life," Tom said, standing up to stretch his stiff legs. "After a while, you start seeing patterns. Everything's connected, you know. Like this control system here." He pointed to one of the floating screens. "It's super advanced, but it's doing the same job as the computer in a modern car. Monitoring, adjusting, preventing problems." He walked over to the damaged section of the ship, which he'd carefully taken apart over the past 2 days. Parts were laid out in precise order on a clean tarp, each one labeled with both V's alien script and Tom's own notes. "The real trick is going to be fixing the containment housing without the right materials, but I think I've got an idea about that." "Your confidence is admirable," V said, "but perhaps misplaced. That housing requires materials that can withstand quantum stress fluctuations. Your planet's metals might work better than you think," Tom interrupted, heading to his storage room. He came back carrying a small box of what looked like metallic powder. "This is a new experimental alloy I got from a friend who works in aerospace. It's designed for hypersonic aircraft engines. If we combine it with that repair resin you showed me yesterday." V's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. The molecular bonding properties of the resin could theoretically enhance the stress resistance of your alloy, but the application would have to be perfect. The slightest flaw would be very bad, yeah. Tom nodded. "That's why we're going to test it first." He pulled out a small device he built the night before from spare parts and alien components. "This little gadget should simulate the quantum stress on a small scale. If our mix can handle this, it might just work on your ship." V moved closer, examining Tom's testing device. "You built this from memory?" After seeing the drive specifications for just 3 days, Tom shrugged. "Like I said, patterns. Once you understand how something works, building a simple version isn't that hard. Used parts from an old microwave, some bits from a broken cell phone, and that spare power crystal you let me study." "Ingenious," V said softly, her skin glowing with a warm golden color he hadn't seen before. "In all my travels, I've never seen someone adapt so quickly to new technology. You truly have a gift, Tom the mechanic." "Nah," Tom said, already mixing the metal powder with the alien resin. "Just got lots of practice looking at broken things and figuring out how to make them work again. Now, let's see if this mixture can handle our little test. If it works, we can start on the real repair tomorrow." He carefully poured the mixture into the test chamber, trying to ignore the way his hands shook slightly from too much coffee and too little sleep. This had to work. He wasn't about to let his most interesting customer down. Tom stared at the damaged quantum drive, running his hand through his messy hair. He'd been awake for nearly 20 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. The test mixture had worked perfectly, too perfectly. It had handled stresses far beyond what they'd expected, which made Tom suspicious. In his experience, when something worked too well, you were usually missing something important. He walked over to his old filing cabinet and pulled out a folder filled with photographs of engine repairs he'd done over the years. V watched curiously as he spread them across his workbench, her skin shifting in subtle patterns of blue and green. "What are you looking for?" she asked, moving closer to examine the worn photographs. "Something's bothering me," Tom muttered, sorting through the pictures. "The way your quantum drive failed. I've seen something like it before." He stopped at a photo of an old diesel engine. "Here it is. Look at this burn pattern." He held up the photo next to the holographic display of V's damaged drive. V's skin flickered with surprise colors. "The damage patterns are similar, but my ship's quantum drive is far more advanced than that primitive engine." "Advanced? Yeah, but physics is physics." Tom grabbed his notebook and started sketching rapidly. 5 years ago, I had this weird problem with a diesel engine. It kept burning through containment rings no matter what we tried. Turned out the problem wasn't the rings, it was resonance. "Resonance?" V leaned in, her large eyes focusing on Tom's rough drawings. "Everything has a natural frequency," Tom explained, adding more details to his sketch. "Like when you hit a wine glass just right, and it shatters. Your quantum drive housing didn't fail because it was too weak. It failed because those pirate weapons hit it at exactly the wrong frequency. They made it vibrate itself apart." V's skin shifted to a deep, thoughtful purple. "That would explain why our standard repair procedures failed. We were trying to reinforce against direct damage, not harmonic vibration." Tom snapped his fingers. "Exactly. And that's why our test mixture worked too well. We weren't testing it the right way." He hurried over to the damaged drive section. "We don't just need something strong. We need something that can absorb and redirect those vibrations." He pulled out his phone and called someone. "Hey, Jack. Yeah, I know it's late. Remember that old Mack truck engine we fixed with the rubber-mounted housing? You still got the specs for that mounting system? Great. Can you send them over?" After a few minutes, Tom's tablet pinged with new files. He immediately started modifying his original repair design. "Instead of trying to make the housing completely rigid, we'll give it just a little flex, like a shock absorber, but for quantum energy. That goes against all standard design protocols," V said, but her skin was showing colors of interest rather than doubt. "Our engineers always strive for perfect stability. Sometimes a little instability is exactly what you need," Tom grinned. "Like riding a bicycle. You actually need to keep making tiny adjustments to stay balanced. Fighting against all movement just makes you fall harder." He spent the next hour modifying their repair mixture, adding layers and varying the composition. When he finally finished, the new housing looked oddly simple, almost crude compared to the original alien technology. "Ready to test it?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. V initiated her ship's diagnostic systems. The quantum drive hummed to life, energy patterns swirling through the new housing. The readouts on the floating screen showed rapidly climbing power levels. "The containment is holding," V said, her skin pulsing with excited colors. "Power at 40%, 60, 80. She paused, her colors shifting to amazement. "Full power achieved. The field stability is, this can't be correct." Tom looked over her shoulder at the readings. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," V said, her skin glowing with brilliant colors. "The field stability is actually higher than original specifications. The housing is. It's adapting to power fluctuations automatically. How did you achieve this with such basic materials?" Sometimes the simple solution is the best one, Tom said, finally allowing himself to feel tired. By letting the housing flex and adjust, it's actually stronger than a rigid one. Like a reed in the wind. It bends, but doesn't break. V touched the new housing gently. Our engineers would never have considered such an approach. They would consider it too primitive, too unreliable. But it works perfectly. She turned to Tom, her skin glowing with what he now recognized as deep respect. You have done the impossible, Tom the mechanic. Yawned and stretched. Nah, not impossible. Just needed a different way of looking at the problem. Now, how about we get some rest before we start testing the full system? I don't know about you, but I could sleep for a week. The morning sun peeked through the workshop windows as Tom ran the final system checks on V's ship. After 12 hours of sleep and a proper meal, both of them felt ready to tackle the last phase of testing. Tom had brought in his old coffee maker and 2 lawn chairs, setting up a makeshift break area next to the ship. So these pirates, Tom said, sipping his coffee while watching the diagnostic screens, they're a common problem out there in space. V sat in the other chair, her tall frame making the furniture look comically small. She held a container of water, as coffee had proven too strong for her system. Her skin rippled with subtle patterns as she spoke. They prey on merchant ships like mine, she explained. They believe that because they have superior weapons, they have the right to take what they want. She paused, her colors shifting to a thoughtful blue. But they didn't expect a simple merchant to know emergency maneuvers. My people believe in being prepared. Tom nodded, watching numbers scroll across the screens. Sounds like you come from a careful bunch. All that perfect technology, everything planned out just right. We pride ourselves on efficiency, V said. Every process optimized, every system refined to its purest form. She gestured at the quantum drive. Until a human mechanic showed us that sometimes imperfection can be an advantage. Tom chuckled. That's the funny thing about perfection. It's usually perfect for exactly one thing. But life has a way of throwing unexpected problems at you. That's why I keep all this old junk around. He waved at his crowded yard. Never know when something from an old tractor might help fix a spaceship. The diagnostic screen beeped, showing another successful test cycle. V's skin shifted to pleased golden tones. In my culture, we would have waited for proper replacement parts, followed exact procedures. The idea of adapting, of improvising. It's not our way. Seems to me like you adapted pretty well, Tom said. You trusted a backwards Earth mechanic with your ship after all. I did, V agreed, her colors warming. Perhaps I've learned more than just repair techniques during my stay here. She set down her water and walked to one of the floating screens, bringing up an image of her home world. This is where I'm from. Tom leaned forward, studying the picture of a city that looked like it was made of crystal and light. It's beautiful, but kind of perfect. Yes, V said, her tone suggesting she was seeing her home with new eyes. Everything in its proper place, every system optimized for maximum efficiency. She turned to look at Tom's cluttered but functional workshop. We would consider this place chaotic, disorganized. And yet you can find exactly what you need, when you need it. Organization's good, Tom said, standing up to check a sensor reading. But sometimes you need a little chaos to solve problems. Like that mix we made for your drive housing. Looked messy while we were making it, but turned out just right. V's skin rippled with what Tom now recognized as amusement. My superiors would be horrified if they knew I allowed such unorthodox repairs. And yet, she called up the latest performance readings. The drive is functioning better than factory specifications. Your messy solution improved on our perfect design. Different way of thinking, that's all, Tom said modestly. You folks aim for perfection. We aim for good enough but fixable. Both ways have their place. Indeed, V said, her colors shifting through complex patterns. We focus so much on achieving perfection that we sometimes forget to learn from imperfection. She turned to Tom with what seemed like sudden decision. Your repair methods, they could be valuable to others in the Merchant Guild. Tom raised an eyebrow. You think other ships might need fixing? Not just ships, V said, her skin glowing with excitement. Your ability to adapt, to see solutions where we see only problems, it's unique. Special. She paused, her colors swirling. I believe I know how to properly thank you for your help, Tom the mechanic. Hey, just doing my job, Tom said, but he could tell from V's colors that she had something bigger in mind. Much bigger. The final checks were complete, and V's ship was ready for departure. Tom stood back, admiring how the morning sunlight played across the ship's silvery surface. The repair work was invisible now, blended perfectly with the original hull. He felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride in fixing something so advanced, and sadness that his most interesting job ever was coming to an end. V emerged from the ship carrying what looked like a small crystal cube. Her skin was shifting through excited colors Tom had never seen before, making her look almost like the northern lights he'd seen in pictures. Before I leave, Tom the mechanic, I must properly reward you for your help, she said, her voice carrying an unusual tone of ceremony. Tom waved his hand. No need for that. The experience was payment enough. Besides, I'm not sure Earth money is much good to you anyway. V's skin rippled with amusement. I am not offering money. I am offering something far more valuable. She held out the crystal cube, which started glowing with a soft blue light. This is a Merchant Guild communications beacon. With it, I can register your facility as an official repair station for Guild vessels. Tom blinked, not quite understanding. You want me to fix more spaceships? Indeed. V activated the cube, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. The Merchant Guild spans 17 star systems. We transport goods across vast distances, and sometimes our ships need repairs far from home. Having reliable repair stations is crucial. The hologram showed a map of trade routes, looking like glowing threads connecting different stars. Tom watched, fascinated, as V manipulated the display. But our repair stations are few and far between, she continued. Many merchants must make long detours for even simple repairs. And as I've learned, sometimes our own advanced facilities cannot solve problems that a more creative approach might fix easily. Tom scratched his beard thoughtfully. So you want me to be like a space truck stop? Break down near Earth. Pull in here for repairs. Exactly, V said, her skin glowing with approval. Your workshop would be the first Earth facility registered with the Guild. We would provide you with basic tools and materials, and you would be compensated well for any repairs. She touched the cube again, and new images appeared. Technical diagrams of various alien ships and systems. This beacon contains basic information about common Guild vessels and technology. It will help you understand what you're working with, though. Her skin flickered with amusement. I suspect you will find your own unique ways to fix things. Tom walked slowly around the hologram, taking it all in. This is quite an offer, but won't your people be worried about sharing technology with Earth? We're pretty far behind you folks. That was discussed, V admitted. But I sent detailed reports about your repair work to the Guild Council. They were impressed, especially by how you improved the quantum drive's performance using local materials. They believe your primitive approach, as they call it, might actually be an advantage. She deactivated the cube and held it out to Tom. You see problems differently than we do. Where we seek perfection, you seek functionality. Where we follow procedures, you innovate. The Guild believes this makes you uniquely qualified to help our merchants when standard solutions fail. Tom took the cube carefully. It felt warm in his hands, like it was alive somehow. This is going to change everything, isn't it? Only as much as you want it to, V said. The beacon has a cloaking function. Your regular customers need never know about your additional services. The Guild will ensure discretion and only send ships when they can arrive unnoticed. Tom looked around his workshop, imagining it as a repair stop for spaceships. It was crazy, impossible, and exactly the kind of challenge he loved. Well, he said finally, grinning. I suppose I better clean up the place a bit. Don't want alien customers thinking Earth mechanics are completely uncivilized. V's skin rippled with bright, happy colors. I knew you would accept. And Tom. She paused, her colors softening. Thank you. Not just for fixing my ship, but for showing me that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. The crystal cube hummed softly in Tom's hands, and he knew his life had just taken a very interesting turn. Breaking down near Earth would no longer be a disaster for merchant ships. It would be a chance to experience some good old-fashioned human ingenuity. 6 months had passed since V's departure, and Tom's repair shop looked almost the same from the outside. The same old trucks sat in the yard, the same worn sign hung over the door, and the same lazy cat dozed in the afternoon sun. But behind the shop, hidden by carefully arranged piles of old machinery, things were very different. Tom stood in his new underground workshop, watching as a sleek alien vessel descended through the holographic camouflage field that made it look like empty sky from above. This would be his 3rd repair job this month. The crystal cube on his workbench glowed softly, displaying the ship's specifications. Welcome to Earth, Tom called out as the ship's hatch opened. 2 merchants emerged, tall, crystalline beings whose bodies refracted light like living prisms. They looked nothing like V, but their relieved expressions were universal. Tom the mechanic, the taller one asked, their voice chiming like bells. We were told you could help. Our navigation core is malfunctioning, and the nearest guild station is 8 light years away. Let's take a look, Tom said, already pulling out his modified diagnostic tools. The merchants watched with fascination as he connected Earth equipment to their advanced technology using adapters he designed himself. His workshop had evolved too. Alongside his old wrenches and screwdrivers sat tools provided by the Merchant Guild, but most interesting were the hybrid tools he created, combinations of Earth ingenuity and alien technology. Each new ship brought new challenges, and each challenge taught him more about mixing the old with the new. As Tom worked, he thought about how his life had changed. The guild paid him in both Earth currency and alien materials, allowing him to expand his operation. He'd hired 2 apprentices, young mechanics who thought they were just learning advanced Earth technology. He taught them his problem-solving methods, preparing them for the day when they might be ready to learn the full truth. Interesting approach, the shorter merchant said, watching Tom use a modified car computer to analyze their navigation core. Most unusual to see primitive technology interfacing with guild systems. Tom grinned, remembering similar words from V. Sometimes primitive works better. Your navigation core's quantum matrix is out of alignment, probably from that meteor shower you mentioned. But instead of replacing it, I think we can recalibrate it using some Earth technology principles. He pulled out a device he'd built last week, a combination of an old smartphone's gyroscope and alien sensing technology. This will let us reset the matrix without taking the whole system apart. Might not be pretty, but it'll get you home. The merchant's crystalline bodies sparkled with surprise as Tom's solution worked perfectly. Their navigation core's readings returned to normal, and the repair took less than 2 hours instead of the days it would have needed at a guild station. As they prepared to leave, the taller merchant turned to Tom. We had heard stories about this place, about an Earth mechanic who fixes the unfixable. We thought they were exaggerated. Nah, Tom said, wiping his hands on his ever-present rag. Nothing unfixable about most problems. Just need to look at them the right way. After the merchants departed, Tom walked back to his regular workshop, where one of his apprentices was working on an old tractor engine. Young Mike looked up as Tom entered. Hey boss, been meaning to ask. How do you learn to fix such advanced stuff? Some of these techniques, I've never seen anything like them. Tom smiled, remembering his first meeting with V. Let's just say I had a really interesting customer who taught me to look at problems differently. He picked up a wrench and joined Mike at the tractor. Speaking of which, how about I show you a new way to think about this engine? That evening, as Tom sat in his office updating his repair logs, The crystal cube lit up with an incoming message. It was from V, her familiar colors shifting across the holographic display. "Tom the mechanic," she said warmly, "the Guild Council is most pleased with your work. Your reputation grows. In fact, I'll be visiting Earth next week with a rather special repair challenge. I think you'll find it particularly interesting." Tom leaned back in his chair, grinning. 6 months ago, he'd been fixing tractors and cars. Now he was Earth's first interstellar mechanic, bridging the gap between two very different worlds, one repair at a time. Life had definitely gotten more interesting, and he wouldn't have it any other way.